Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
President Trump's multi-trillion-dollar Big Beautiful Bill is about to be signed into law. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The House of Representatives passed the tax break and spending cuts package today amid an intense pressure campaign from the White House. Michael Yoshida has the story.
A deeply divided House passing the Senate's version of President Trump's mega bill.
Nobody said it would be easy. But you know what? We didn't come here to do easy things. We came here to do big things.
A group of hardline GOP members who had threatened to block the sweeping tax and spending cuts legislation eventually falling in line, following an intense campaign from the White House and Republican Party leaders. The president reportedly promising fiscal hardliners concerned about trillions being added to the national deficit that certain provisions for green energy tax credits would be phased out.
What those holdouts were doing was exactly what we were all doing. We are advocating for our district.
Democrats denouncing the bill. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffrey speaking for hours, delaying a final vote.
I'm going to take my time and ensure that the American people fully understand how damaging this bill will be to their quality of life.
The multi-trillion-dollar legislation would unlock tax cuts and funding boosts for national security, partly paid for by the largest cut to the federal safety net in decades. Tax breaks and changes to the tax code could benefit corporate America, manufacturers, and high-income Americans, while low-income Americans could be worse off due to the bill's historic cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. A ripple effect could also hit the healthcare system, especially rural hospitals, and roughly $3.4 trillion is also projected to be added to the deficit over the next decade. In Washington, Michael Yoshida, KPBS News.
Congressman Darrell Issa's vote helped secure the slim majority for House Republicans who supported the bill. In a statement after the vote, he called the spending plan, quote, a massive win for the American people. Those who showed up at Issa's office in Escondido today disagree. Before the vote, they raised their voices to urge Issa to vote no. They also left messages with staff saying Issa is helping President Trump decimate safety net programs.
I would recommend that Darrell Issa study what empathy means. You know, as elected officials and representatives, you are here to improve the lives of the people in your district. You're not here to make yourself rich. You're not here to make your millionaire or billionaire buddies rich. You're here to help the hardworking men and women of your country, of your district, improve their quality of life.
Today's event was organized by several local advocacy groups. Issa won his seat in the 48th district by nearly 20 percentage points in last year's election. All four of San Diego's Democratic representatives voted against the bill.
Well, tonight, pretty great weather to be out and about. 63, fairly typical for us with some of those low clouds working in. I know a lot of festivities going on tonight, so we're looking good for that. Even into tomorrow night, really no problem as we keep things smooth sailing here. But we'll be talking about a change in that marine layer for the week to come, coming up.
Nurses at UC San Diego Health today rallied against the abrupt decision to lay off more than 200 employees. Workers tell KPBS reporter Alexander Wen the decision not only disrupts lives, but also affects patient care.
Roughly 3 dozen people rallied in front of UCSD Jacobs Medical Center to protest the cuts. UCSD Health last week laid off 200 workers across its clinics and hospitals. That's about 1.5% of its workforce. The cuts include many frontline workers.
And when we are experiencing a staffing crisis already.
Nurse Michael Kennedy says it's the workers who make UCSD one of the best healthcare systems in the nation.
UCSD deserves its #1 status, they really do, but they deserve it because of us, because of these dedicated nurses out here.
Workers say the layoffs were abrupt. Candace Dangler got a text message while at the doctor's office,
requesting that I go into a Zoom meeting.
By the time the visit was over,
I had already been laid off. No one ever spoke to me.
UCSD says the layoffs were necessary due to rising costs, regulatory uncertainty, and federal funding cuts. In a statement, the healthcare system says the recent decision to lay off members of our team was very difficult, and we did not arrive at that decision lightly or quickly. The decision followed a rigorous and comprehensive staff benchmarking process that focused on safety and operational sustainability.
While funding cuts to the UC are real, the union says those cuts should come from the top, not these frontline workers, because that affects patient care.
I've been getting reports that now patients have actually urinated in their bed, waiting for someone to come and help them as a result of not having enough staff.
Well, they made no cuts at the top, I'll tell you that. They made no cuts at the top. They immediately went for the bottom. They gave themselves a pay raise a week after firing staff. That is unconscionable. That is unbelievable.
The union is asking that UCSD reinstate laid-off workers immediately. UCSD says it is working diligently to, quote, ensure patient safety while managing this difficult process. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Tomorrow, the United States is celebrating the birth of the country 249 years ago. KPBS video journalist Matthew Bowler joins Marines, sailors, and soldiers who can watch the fireworks as American citizens for the very first time.
Today is a special day for these 30 service members.
Pakistan, Philippines, Russia, and South Africa.
From 16 different countries.
I hereby declare on oath.
On the eve of the 4th of July, these service members.
So help me God. Congratulations, you are now United States citizens.
Are now naturalized American citizens. They took their citizenship oath in a ceremony on board the USS Midway Museum.
I'm first-generation American now.
Lance Corporal Arthur Reno is from Brazil. He came here as a child, and joining the Marines gave him a path to citizenship.
Yeah, it was a process that took me approximately like 7 months since I started, and I've been in the military since last year.
Cynthia Basham is the chief U.S. district judge in San Diego. She says she gets choked up giving the oath of citizenship.
I have cried at past immigration ceremonies.
She says every ceremony is special.
I think it's really rewarding to see a group of people say, I want to be a United States citizen. You know, I think we are a country made up of immigrants.
Basham says it's important to remember what we have in common.
And I feel like immigration ceremonies are a joyous occasion when we can embrace the fact that we are all United States citizens despite our very diverse backgrounds and very diverse feelings about the country.
What does today mean to Lance Corporal Reno?
I used to say that I was serving into like another country's military, but now I can say that I'm serving in my country military.
Matthew Bowler, KPBS News.
Congratulations to all of them. Now, you might have noticed them as you pass Snowbell Drive on the 805. Scores of American flags flying proudly over thousands of American heroes at Miramar National Cemetery. But the future of the flags is in jeopardy. KPBS reporter John Carroll explains how you can help to keep them flying.
Driving into the Miramar National Cemetery is a solemn experience made majestic by this, the Avenue of Flags.
It's 50 flags. It's the only cemetery out of 155 national cemeteries that have an Avenue of Flags.
This cemetery opened in late 2010 as Fort Rosecrans was nearing capacity. The Avenue of Flags came a couple of years later.
It's kind of the postcard for this cemetery. Everybody recognizes, and it's a great tribute to the men and women who served our country that are buried here.
These flags only come down to be changed out. Other than that, they're flying 24/7, 365 days a year. Apart from the wear and tear these flags sustain year-round, there is another costly issue. It has to do with the mechanics used to raise and lower the flags, mechanics found inside the flagpole.
They've come to the point that the mechanisms and the cabling are worn to the point that it's being difficult to raise and lower the flags.
And if the mechanism gets so bad that it won't work anymore, well, then changing out the flags, which cost $100 a piece, gets really expensive.
If the mechanism's not working, then we got to bring out, somebody's got to bring a cherry picker out, et cetera, et cetera. So the mechanisms are so important to maintain this beautiful avenue of flags.
Here's the financial picture. Every flagpole costs $2,000 to fix. Some quick math tells you that's $100,000. Each flag gets replaced 2 to 3 times a year. That's a $5,000 yearly bill. So the foundation is holding an online gala to raise the needed funds. You can go to their website, miramarcemetery.org, or mail a check to the foundation at their street address. We'll put that in our online version of this story. This cemetery and its spectacular flag-lined avenue are especially near and dear to Mike Cardenas' heart. His late father, Brigadier General Robert Cardenas, was instrumental in getting this cemetery built and the avenue of flags installed. And if you choose to donate, you'll receive something very special, a star cut from one of the decommissioned flags.
I can fly no longer. The sun and winds caused me to become tattered and torn. Please carry me as a reminder that you are not forgotten.
A beautiful keepsake, signifying a commitment to keep the avenue of flags flying over this hallowed ground forever. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A very nice story by John. Now, the online fundraiser goes through the end of this month.
I'm William Brangham. Tonight on the NewsHour, Republicans claim victory after passing legislation at the core of President Trump's agenda. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
New affordable housing is coming to downtown Chula Vista. The development will offer nearly 80 new units, but don't bring your car. iNews Source reporter intern Christopher Edwards has more.
Chula Vista is behind on its goal to build more affordable housing, but one new project near 3rd Avenue could help. The city recently approved loaning up to $4 million towards the construction of 79 new units at 3rd and East Street. Most of them would be studios. Councilmember Jose Preciado says the project is much needed.
It's rare that you have this kind of pricing available, and I could see somebody who's a service worker in a waiting capacity, or even, somebody potentially who works in the back kitchen as a dishwasher might be able to afford to live in this space.
But the project offers no parking for the dozens of residents who would live there. That was enough for Mayor John McCann to vote against the plan.
My major concern, obviously, is I've seen this property go into a lot of different iterations, and we've gone from 23 units to 53 units to 79, and although units have gone up, the parking's gone down, and that's a major problem.
Community Housing Works is the project's developer. The nonprofit says it will seek partnerships with nearby parking lots and market to people who don't own a car or who work in the area. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source reporting intern Christopher Edwards.
And iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. This story is part of our Public Matters partnership. To find out more, you can go to kpbs.org/Public Matters. Although the city of San Diego was able to find money in its budget to keep bonfire pits maintained another year, other cities are turning to private companies to foot the bill, and it is not cheap. The city of Coronado partnered with Blue Light Bonfires. Beachgoers who want to use one of the Coronado's fire pits can get a permit on the city's website for $500. Then you'll need to reach out to Blue Light to set up a date and time for a bonfire for up to 100 people. The city of Coronado makes revenue on the permits, and the company gets paid to set up and clean up the fire pits.
When relatives come into town and we go to the beach and have a fire, we usually have 30, 40 people, so I think that would be feasible. So it's something we could plan too. If you have to get a permit, it's something where you're guaranteed a spot too.
Packages start at $300. Services include a propane fire pit, cleanup, seating, catering, and projector screens. Independence Day is almost here, and millions of Americans will be traveling, feasting on barbecue and watching firework displays. And of course, it all comes with a cost. Ivan Rodriguez breaks down just how much you can expect to pay for things from gas to food.
The 4th of July, a time to gather around the grill, enjoy the summer sun, and watch firework displays light up the sky. It could also mean getting stuck in traffic on your way to your destination, with an expected 61 million people set to hit the road.
Most of those people are going to be driving to their destinations, and that's usually the case. Typically, whenever we look at holiday travel, the overwhelming majority drive because it's easier, it's cheaper for people, it affords more flexibility.
With July 4th gas prices at their lowest since the beginning of the pandemic, drivers will feel a little less pain at the pump.
We're paying about 30 cents less than we were this time last year. We haven't paid gas prices this low since 2021.
Air travel, too, is taking off.
We're projecting a record in the air travel category, more than 5.5 million people, 5.84 million.
But so are the prices. AAA says round-trip domestic airfare for this period is up 4% over the last year due to demand. And if you're hosting that backyard barbecue, the price of food has mostly leveled off. A meal for 10 people with all the traditional July 4th offerings will cost $130, up 2.2% from last year, according to Wells Fargo. The higher overall prices are primarily due to beef and egg inflation, the bank says. Your best bet for grilling on a budget? Chicken, up only 1% over the last year. In Atlanta, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
And here are some important food safety reminders for those cooking this weekend. First, keep your hands, utensils, and surfaces clean before, during, and after you prepare food. Next, keep raw meats away from other ready-to-eat foods to avoid cross-contamination. And thirdly, use a food thermometer to ensure that meat you're grilling reaches the correct temperature. Finally, be sure not to leave food that can spoil out for more than 2 hours at room temperature. And here's a quick check at local gas prices. The average price of a gallon of regular gas dropped for the 10th consecutive day to $4.62. It dropped more than 6 cents over that period. And again, the national average is more than $3.16. If you could go back in time, you'd find that 4th of July in San Diego had a very specific sound, and that sound has now been recreated, but it took a lot of work. Ken Kramer shows us in this story about San Diego.
Here's the Whaley House in Old Town, well known for being haunted, as you know. But we found something in the Whaley House that could easily be overlooked, and here it is. Do you know what this is? It's a cannon. It's a ceremonial cannon, and it's more than 140 years old. Now, I want to take you back. You might remember a story we did about how San Diego used to celebrate the 4th of July. We mentioned that one of the things San Diego used to do was fire off a cannon. But people complained that their windows, so that was stopped. And that old 1876 cannon, eventually it went missing. Well, Jim Richmond saw that, and he wrote us to say the cannon was found by the Save Our Heritage organization, and with a donation from descendants of the man who gave it to the city in 1876, the Bandy Blacksmiths Guild in Escondido restored that cannon. Which wasn't easy. I mean, it was filled with concrete. But these blacksmiths made it once again what it was back on those 4th of Julys prior to 1900. Finally, they had to test it, of course. Sounding off again is our city's centennial cannon. So congratulations to everybody who restored it and to the Whaley House for keeping it safe. Should you see it there, you might get a bang out of knowing this story about San Diego.
Ken Kramer has a half hour of stories every week about San Diego. You can see them Thursday nights at 8 o'clock right here on KPBS.
Well, of course, we are headed into the 4th of July, and that means you probably are going to be spending the day outside at some point or another, maybe even just the evening hours. And the good news is our weather looking a-okay for the 4th of July. Really no problems out there for us. We do, though, have a lessening marine layer as we go through a lot of this weekend and into next week, which means most of us will start to notice a bit of a warming trend, or at least a couple of spots, especially as you get away from the coastline, finding those numbers headed up into next week. First off, though, tonight, pretty typical. Like I said, some festivities going on. 63 the low in the city as you work towards Oceanside, 62, and headed out towards Mount Laguna, we go to 57. There's also quite a few areas tomorrow that we'll be dealing with a lot of different fun things throughout the day, including in the city, and we're talking about a pretty typical warm, dry day. If you were looking for for that monsoonal moisture, by the way, that made its way back into Arizona and New Mexico. That's shoved off towards the east, so we're putting a lull on that as we head through tomorrow, the 4th of July. Looking quiet across our region, 74 for the city, 75 as you head towards Oceanside. Mount Laguna going to 73 for the afternoon, and Borrego Springs topping out at 105. So the 4th, pretty quiet here. Temperatures in the mid-70s. We start to see those numbers go up through the weekend on the coastal communities. And like I said, that marine layer will be thinning out a little bit for the weekend. Not much, but at least a little bit. As we head inland, notice how it does get brighter here over the weekend. Temperatures back towards 90 degrees. A lot of spots still keeping on the tradition of some more festivities through the weekend. And I know a lot of people will just be out and about with backyard picnics, backyard barbecues, all sorts of things. It does look fine. We're going to be dry in the mountains as well. Temperatures lower 70s to start off the Saturday, Sunday time frame, but again, the holiday in the mid 70s, still pretty pleasant. We do warm up though by Tuesday. Notice those numbers rocket into the mid 80s, and that's the sign of that warming trend, which in the deserts will push us over the 105 range as we go through Sunday into Tuesday, even higher for Wednesday. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Have you listened to The Finest? It's a new episode of the KPBS podcast is out today, featuring a Kumeyaay comic book that rewrites California's history and inspires a hopeful future. You can listen now at kpbs.org/thefinest or wherever you get your podcasts. Well, tomorrow marks a very special birthday for a San Diego icon. The Giant Dipper roller coaster at Belmont Park will turn 100. The coaster and the park have been through some good and a lot of bad times. KPBS reporter John Carroll looks back to show us how the amusement park and the coaster got to where they are today.
Belmont Park on a sunny summer day. Between the rides, the arcade, the various food offerings, the place is bustling. And there, towering above it all, the Giant Dipper, which carried its first riders a century ago tomorrow. But the story of this beloved ride and the park in which it sits goes back even further. The year was 1914. John D. Spreckles had already lived in San Diego for 8 years, having moved his family from San Francisco following the great earthquake of 1906. Spreckles saw opportunity everywhere he looked, including Mission Beach. That year, he and another man proposed a new resort for the area that is now Belmont Park. Sometime later, the resort plans turned into an amusement park called the Mission Beach Amusement Center. Construction began in the spring of 1924. The first thing to be completed was a roller skating rink that opened a year later, followed by the plunge pool and a dance club. In early June, a permit was issued for construction of the roller coaster. Construction began immediately, and on July 4th, 1925, the roller coaster started rolling. Over the last 100 years, there have been setbacks, fires that seriously damaged the ride. At least one person has died on the Dipper, and it's almost been torn down more than once. Hold on! But 100 years later, and it's still rolling strong.
Belmont has had, I grew up in San Diego, it has a bit of a checkered past.
Steve Thomas is the general manager of Belmont Park. Since 2011, it's been owned by Pacifica Enterprises Management, a local family-owned company. Thomas says they knew making this place a success once again would be a challenge.
And it was a bit of a fragmented park at the time, where you had a bit of the strip mall mentality with lots of different operators. And when Pacifica came in, one of the goals was for us to start to buy up those independent operators and unify a park and make a real solid and unified beach boardwalk.
The cost of making a real solid boardwalk amusement park has meant some major financial outlays over the years. When Pacifica began a restoration project for the plunge pool in 2017, it was estimated to cost about $4 million. By the time it reopened in 2019, Thomas says the cost had ballooned to $20 million. And then there's the constant upkeep of everything else. Like all of California's coastal theme parks, past and present, Belmont Park faces something of a double-edged sword as to their location. The great side of the sword, you're right here on the shore of the beautiful Pacific Ocean. The not-so-great side of the sword, all that salty ocean air is murder on the rides.
We have a team of about 32 maintenance and facilities, some focused on the rides solely. We have dedicated coaster mechanics plus dedicated ride mechanics. Then we have a facilities and a paint team. So we've got 3 full-time painters. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. They start at one end and they go around to the other. Every 3 years we repaint Giant Dipper. Just the whole thing, but it is a constant challenge and it takes year-round work. We are constantly replacing lumber, fixing, repairing parts. It is never ending.
Just for a rough number, it's about 700 million people have been to Belmont Park in 100 years, and over 70 million Giant Dipper rides. It's pretty fantastic.
This past Tuesday, a special celebration marking the occasion, complete with a brief history lesson from Mayor Todd Gloria.
The Star of India arrived after Belmont Park was open. The San Diego Museum of Art in Balboa Park came after Belmont. The Old Globe Theater, the El Cortez Hotel. The San Diego Padres weren't even a minor league team at the time of the creation of Belmont Park. And San Diego State University did exist, but at the time it was the San Diego Teachers College.
Finally, back to the star of this coastal show and a bit of fact-checking by way of reporter involvement. Full disclosure, I am a big roller coaster fan. So how does the Giant Dipper stand up at its century mark? Good enough to make this reporter laugh with childlike glee, just like the millions who've ridden these rails over the last 100 years. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Oh, John has all the fun. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. And thank you for joining us from all of us here at KPBS. Have a happy 4th.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.